All right, let's look at just a few more theories on how we process stress. So Viktor Frankl, he was a Nazi concentration camp survivor, and his theories center on the concept of human pain and suffering. His theory of logotherapy is defined by the search for the meaning of life. So for your life to be complete, he thinks that there must be suffering, but there also must be a search for the meaning of the suffering to resolve the issues of emotional stress. And then he has tragic optimism, where he believes that the ability to turn suffering into meaningful experiences with a positive perspective on life events will actually help you get over a particular stress. Here's just a specific example. Cindy Leitner lost her daughter to a drunk driver. She was very young, and she formed the national organization called Mothers Against Drunk Drivers, or MAD. He also has the idea of no dynamics, which is that he feels that we have this we might be in a state of boredom, and that might be because we haven't yet discovered the meaning of life. Well, if we could take that boredom and we can find some form of meaning of life for ourselves, we can actually enhance our own human potential. Wayne Dyer, he has the theory about guilt and worry that deal with stress. For him, stressors fall into two categories: guilt and worry, which are two emotional states that immobilize us in our thought process or halt it, and it distracts us from being in the present moment and being unable to conquer stress and feel peaceful. He says that guilt and worry rob us from living in the present moment. Being in the present moment, he talks about really experiencing what's going on at the present moment, not thinking about what happened yesterday or what's going on in the future, but really experiencing whatever is going on right now. What is guilt? The conscious preoccupation with undesirable past thoughts and behaviors. Guilt is so powerful that it can have a paralyzing effect on all of our other thoughts and feelings and prevent positive behavior or action from taking place. He says that for the most part, guilt is fruitless because no amount of it can change the past. And when we learn lessons from this, whenever we feel guilty, the guilt seems to disappear. He breaks down guilt into two different kinds: leftover guilt, which is unresolved guilt left over from childhood experiences, and self-imposed guilt, or guilt that we place on ourselves when a personal value has been compromised or violated, or we do something that doesn't really hold up to what we think of ourselves, or what are the standards that we've set for ourselves. We feel guilty that we do a certain thing. What about worry? Guilt keeps the mind hostage with thoughts and behaviors from the past, but worry will fill the mind regarding events yet to come. Guilt and worry are both manifestations of fear, and fear of getting caught, or dealing with certain consequences, or dealing with a certain issue. Worry is the immobilization of thinking in the present moment as a result of a preoccupation with things that may or may not occur in the future. So he says that we tend to worry about things we have no control over, and sometimes we use it as a sign that we love someone or we worry about them. I just had a friend who said she was really worried because her son just got his driver's license, and she's just so worried that he's going to get in a car accident and something bad will happen. And we blame this worry on love. I just love you so much. You're so important to me. I just worry about you because I love you. But it's really important to see the difference between worrying and about the future and planning for the future. Worrying doesn't get us anywhere because it paralyzes us, but planning will. So his plan to get over worry is to first recognize that we do worry, and then to either find a lesson that we can learn from past worries or start planning for the future events that you are thinking about to preoccupy your mind. So in the case of my friend, she needs to be planning for the future. What could she do instead of worrying about it and have some kind of plan of action? She could sit and talk to her son about her fears, or the statistics of new drivers and how often they get into accidents. Maybe drive with him some more, talk to him about not texting, just setting up a plan so she knows that she's doing something about it instead of just kind of sitting in the worry state. Buscaglia talks about the lessons of self-love, and where there is fear, there is stress, and the stress response is initiated. And what's the opposite of fear? It's love. And what is self-esteem? Well, how we feel about ourselves or how we love ourselves. When we have low self-esteem, we undercut our self-value, or our self-acceptance, or self-love. And this is thought to be a powerful buffer against threats. We may be controlling a threat ourselves, so no one else does, just possibly. What we're doing to ourselves with low self-esteem is we're putting conditions on ourselves for self-acceptance, primarily physical appearance and what we're capable of doing that prevents perfection. So how do we get out of this trap? Well, you throw the idea of perfection right out the window. He suggests that we need to focus on the things that make us unique, or our X factor, instead of comparing ourselves to others, and then we can move on to self-love. So do you have a gap in your teeth? Is there a special talent that you have? Is your hair extra curly? Is your skin a certain color? This is your X factor. This is what makes you different than everybody else. And instead of looking at that as something that's it's not perfect, this is what's perfect about you. And when we can accept that, we're able to have higher self-esteem, higher self-love, and then less stress. Abraham Maslow talks about the art of self-actualization. So instead of researching how personality and behavior are affected by stress, he researched the personality traits of people who cope well with stress so that others can follow in their path. And his theory was that people operate on a hierarchy of needs that influence behavior. So when the needs are at one level are met, then the needs at a higher level can be addressed. So the first tier is the most basic: food, sleep, and sex. And then the second is safety. Safety needs are also things that provide security or order and stability, like money, clothing, and housing. Belongings and love, feeling affection and strong bonding relationships. The need for self-esteem, or the need to seek or prove self-worth. Self-actualization, and this is reaching a person's highest human potential and capabilities, or having a sense of personal fulfillment. And then lastly, we have self-transcendence, the highest stage where a person gives their life to the service of others, like Mother Teresa. Their life isn't theirs anymore. So Maslow, as he researched these individuals, he found certain personality traits that allowed them to, or what seemed like that allowed them to deal with stress better than other people. And this is what he found. So these people had highly efficient perception of reality. These people had a clearer perspective of themselves, and they weren't prideful. Acceptance. Not only were they aware of their strengths, but as their weaknesses as well. Naturalness and spontaneity. They felt comfortable in their own skin. They don't put up a front to be something else. Most importantly, they go with the flow, and they're not frightened by the unknowns. They're not worriers. Problem centering. They were dedicated to their jobs and their other responsibilities. They felt like they were part of the team. They didn't get into the drama. They just wanted to do a good job. Solitude and independence. They're happy with others, and they're just as happy as being alone. But they didn't feel so dreadfully lonely when they were just by themselves. Satisfaction was found within themselves and not dependent on others. They had a continual freshness of appreciation. They stopped to smell the roses. They found pleasure in small things. They had creativity. They were able to come up with new ideas, visualize it, and implement it. They weren't afraid to fail because they realized that failure leads to success. They knew not what to do next time. They had interpersonal relationships. They had a small circle of friends that challenged them for the good. Human kinship. They had a genuinely unselfish desire to help the human race. A democratic character. They think they have something to learn from everyone. A strong sense of ethical values, consistent for what is right and wrong for them. They don't waver in the decision-making area. Resistance to enculturation. They're not likely to conform or follow trends just because. They had a sense of humor. They had the ability to laugh at their own mistakes. And sometimes these people had mystical or peak sensations, when you feel one with the world and very much at peace with yourself. Now, not too many people got to this mystical or peak sensation. It was only like 1% of the population. And then they usually didn't stay there, because they had bad days too and mess-ups, but they didn't dwell on it. We all have the potential for self-actualization, but sometimes we get in our own way and we limit ourselves and we set barriers, maybe defense mechanisms to protect our own emotions. But many researchers agree that these characteristics help all of us to resist the effects of stress. Martin Seligman's idea about stress deals with the art of being happy. Increasing a person's happiness to balance the scale of emotion isn't always possible, but encouraged in a stress-filled world. Remember that top level of the brain that we talked about before, that we have the ability to override our emotion? We can control our emotions through thought. And he came up with this idea called positive psychology. And to do this, we need to have positive emotions or positive thoughts, think positively, work on all those positive personality traits that Maslow talked about, and if we can, try and be in the most positive environments as possible. We are responsible for looking at ourselves and seeing if we can make any changes for our own happiness, and then we need to do it. Unfortunately, no one can do that for us. When we look at all of the theories that we talked about, one thing in common is that we use coping mechanisms to deal with stress. We want to protect our minds from any threats. Self-awareness is really important to reducing stress. When we talk about self-awareness, we mean knowing our character or knowing our feelings, our motives, and desires about things. And when we are self-aware, it really is a critical process to help us move beyond being defensive so we can move beyond solving problems and reducing stress. If we can look at ourselves and see, how do I respond about things? How do I think about things? Why do I feel this way? Can I do anything that can make me better? This is how we start to resolve issues and reduce our stress.